And if I were to summarize Sun Tzu's philosophy on warfare, I would summarize it in 2 words: speed and deception. As well, Sun Tzu marks a very different style in Eastern warfare as in comparison to Western warfare. When you read tomes about Western warfare, you'll always hear about we have to attack always, never ever retreat, never surrender, no matter how awful the odds are against you, you have to fight to the bitter end, and if you do anything less, well, you're a coward, and you failed your state. Sun Tzu, on the other hand, doesn't buy that at all. He's perfectly willing to retreat or not engage in battle if he sees that the odds are against him. Sun Tzu is happy to withdraw and wait for the point that he can favorably engage the enemy. Sun Tzu wants to win, and he wants to win in the most efficient way that he possibly can. Therefore, he's willing to use tricks and diversions which Western generals would look down upon and frown as somehow ungentlemanly or beneath them. But I want to pick up on that idea of winning in the most efficient manner possible. What is the most efficient manner possible? Well, Sun Tzu explains in what might be his most famous quote from The Art of War. Sun Tzu says, "To fight and conquer in all your battles is not supreme excellence. Supreme excellence consists in breaking the enemy's resistance without ever having to fight." And when you hear that, that makes perfect sense. However, the way it's portrayed doesn't give you the full context if you read the whole passage. If you just read the passage on its own, it makes it seem like you gotta be this ultimate badass and just come in and stare down your enemies, and they just tremble in your wake. They just tremble at the very thought of having to fight you. And that aspect of terror may very well be important in warfare, but terror isn't what Sun Tzu is talking about here. Let me read you the whole passage. Sun Tzu said, "In the practical art of war, the best thing of all is to take the enemy's country whole and intact. To shatter and destroy it is not so good. So too, it is better to recapture an enemy army rather than to destroy it. To capture a regiment, a detachment, or company in its entirety rather than to destroy them. Hence, to fight and conquer in all your battles is not supreme excellence. Supreme excellence consists in breaking the enemy's resistance without having to fight." So, with that context, what Sun Tzu is trying to say here is that the most efficient way to win isn't to beat your enemy or to scare them into not showing up, but rather to make those guys work for you, to take their country and their army and their resources and co-opt them into your own, thus making your own army substantially stronger in the process. And I don't think that there's any question that that is the ultimate goal for every general, is to somehow co-opt the enemy's country into their own without actually having to go there and fight their army to do it. And you might say, that's all well and good, Spencer, but how often does that actually happen? The answer? More often than you would think. I think the best recent historical example of this principle playing out would be in the run-up to World War II, where Hitler was able to annex and co-opt both Austria and Czechoslovakia into his country without ever having to fire a shot. And once he annexed those countries, he had full access to their resources, to their industrial capacity, and of course, to their soldiers and military equipment. And that's not to say that I think Hitler is a great general, or that Sun Tzu thinks that Hitler is a great general. I can't speak for Sun Tzu and what he would say. What I can say, though, is that Sun Tzu would probably be in approval of this move by Hitler. I think there's lots of other moves that Hitler made later in his lifetime that Sun Tzu would say, "What the hell are you doing, man?" But that's a discussion for another time. For now, though, let's go back and look at those 2 ideas that summarize Sun Tzu's philosophy on warfare: speed and deception. Let's see what he has to say in this regard. In the very first chapter of The Art of War, Sun Tzu says, "All warfare is based on deception. Hence, when we are able to attack, we must seem unable. When using our forces, we must seem inactive. When we are near, we must make the enemy believe we are far away. When we are far away, we must make him believe we are near. Hold out baits to entice the enemy. Feign disorder and crush him. If he is secure at all points, be prepared for him. If he is in superior strength, evade him. If your opponent is quick to anger, seek to irritate him. Feign inferiority to encourage our enemy's arrogance. If he is at ease, give him no rest. If his forces are united, separate them. Attack when he is unprepared, appear when you are not expected. These military devices leading to victory must not be divulged beforehand. Here, I want to contrast Western and Eastern warfare styles once again. So in ancient Western warfare, this deception and trying to pull the wool over your enemy's eyes was not predominantly featured. When we think of the Roman Empire, they were terrible at deception in their battles. They were successful not because they used the art of war, but because they had the most advanced and powerful military of the age. As well, they were pretty comfortable with losing and then replacing that army with another one. So it didn't matter if you defeated the Romans, they would just keep coming. And that dogged determination, combined with their military prowess, created the Roman Empire we know today. What's interesting, though, is when you look at the instances where the Romans were badly defeated, they were defeated by armies who were using the tactics of Sun Tzu. Two great examples of this would be the Battle of Lake Trasimene. This was a battle during the Second Punic War against Hannibal, and this battle took place after Hannibal had crossed the Alps. So first, Hannibal had encouraged his enemy's arrogance because he knew all these Roman commanders were very aggressive and very hot-headed, and he would use that mercilessly to his advantage. So he got these Romans all fired up to come out and get him. And then he was able to use deception to make his forces seem farther away than they really were. Then Hannibal hid all his troops in a nearby forest along the route the Romans would have to march to get to where they needed to be. This place was an even better ambush spot because on the other side of the road there was a lake, Lake Trasimene. So the Romans, when attacked, would have nowhere to go. So while the Romans were all spread out marching along this road, not expecting Hannibal's forces, all of a sudden Hannibal's forces emerge from this forest, pour down the hill, and completely crush the Roman army. And I think this battle is a great representation of what Sun Tzu meant put into practice. In fact, Hannibal utilizes a variety of Sun Tzu's tactics throughout his career. In fact, he even at some places exceeds the rules of the art of war, the Battle of Cannae being a perfect example of that. Regardless though, Hannibal is a great person to study to help enhance your understanding of the art of war and seeing some of these principles actually playing out in reality. The second battle I wanted to look at was the Battle of the Teutoburg Forest, another battle in which the art of war was used against the Roman Empire. So in this battle, a man named Arminius, a German in the service of the Roman Empire who didn't really support the Roman Empire. In fact, he supported the German tribes far more. Arminius was able to get the trust of the Romans, serving as sort of a guide and liaison between the German tribes. Eventually, Arminius would lead this poor Roman magistrate by the name of Publius Quintilius Varus on a death march, with Varus completely in the dark of what the future had in store for him. Arminius led Varus and his legions deep into the German forest to a specific point in which he had thousands of German tribesmen waiting to ambush the legionaries. At their appointed time, the German tribesmen sprang out of the forest and ambushed and destroyed these Roman legions. Varus was, of course, killed in the process, and it was considered one of the most devastating defeats ever to happen to the Roman Empire. Augustus, who was the emperor at the time, was said to have never gotten over this defeat. And even as an old man, he would wander around and abruptly slam his fist on the table and shout, "Quintilius Varus, give me back my legions!" A great story, no doubt. But eventually, Western armies would learn the benefits of deception and misinformation for the enemy. For example, in World War I, you would see Western generals paint trenches and fake artillery placements in order to fool observation planes flying overhead as to the Army's true positions. And in World War II, Dwight Eisenhower manufactured an entire inflatable army and stationed it in order to fool Hitler into thinking that the Allies would conduct the D-Day landings in the Netherlands rather than in Normandy. So it took a while, but eventually the art of war would become accepted practice in the West.
This